Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back, everyone. Glad you could make it here today on our Wellness and Wednesday show. We're here to talk about intermittent fasting versus calorie restriction and why there are huge differences, actually 7 big differences between the two. And only one of them is going to give you the biggest and ultimate benefits that you are looking for. So meaning, if you are looking for overall better health, if you're looking for anti-aging based benefits, if you're looking for overall wellness benefits, if you're looking to transform your body, there's a huge difference between intermittent fasting versus calorie restriction. And what I want to do is share with you exactly what those 7 big differences are. And then, of course, by the end of the show, you can make the choices for yourself. It's your life. It's your style of eating. You decide what's best for you. But I do want to say that there are benefits to both. So let's start with the big benefits of both. Fasting, or intermittent fasting, if we just want to put it simply, is stopping eating for a period of time during the day. It's typically a minimum of 12 hours. We like to say, start your fast at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whenever you can. The more hours before you go to bed, the better, right, to a degree. And then going at least 12 hours the next day. The simplest factor is 6 at night to 6 in the morning, 7 at night to 7 in the morning, however you want to structure it. That's an intermittent fast. It can be longer, but we're just going to keep it at that for today. I have lots more episodes on intermittent fasting, all the basics, all the benefits that I will link up today at stephencabral.com/2021. Head on over there for all of the previous links and all the research as well. Okay. So what is calorie restriction? Well, caloric restriction is this. It is saying that typically you eat 2,000 calories a day, but you're going to go on a caloric restrictive diet, which is going to be for you maybe 1,500 calories. Now you say, okay, 1,500 calories. I've heard that if I subtract 500 calories per day for 7 days, I'll lose a pound of weight. That's true in some cases, not true in others. I've talked about that on other shows. It has a lot more to do with your gut microbiome, overall levels of inflammation, hormones, than just calorie restriction, right? Because a calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie. It doesn't work that way. But it'd be nice if it did. So let's say this, though. Caloric restriction, though, has been shown, at least in animal-based models, to improve overall aging, improve overall disease, and also improve longevity. So we know that for sure. So they're both great. They're both great in their own way, but they act in different ways. And that's what I want to show you here today. So when we talk about caloric restriction on today's show, we're not going to talk about caloric restriction with intermittent fasting. Because, for example, if you took the same 1,500 calories, you went from 2,000 to 1,500, let's say, and I'm not saying 1,500 is right for you, but I'm using it as an example. So 1,500 calories, and for the caloric restriction, let's just say you're eating 500 calories at breakfast, 500 calories at lunch, and 500 calories at dinner. Okay, we're eating 3 meals a day, 500 calories for each. Simple, right? We still get our caloric restriction. We eat 3 meals a day, perfectly fine. But let's say those meals were at, 7 in the morning, we'll say, and we'll say another one was at noon, and another one was at 7 at night. You're going to 8, so you go until 8 o'clock at night, and maybe you have some snacks before bed, but it's all within the 1,500 calories, right? Okay, so that's how we're keeping it. Caloric restriction is not saying when you're eating. It doesn't include an intermittent fast, but you have reduced your overall calories, and that in and of itself is a good thing. The difference is you could take the 1,500 calories and you could do it with an intermittent fast. That's why they're not exactly the same. And that's why we're going to give you the window of the intermittent fast. All right. So let's assume today the same amount of calories. Okay. We're assuming the same amount of calories per day, but one is an intermittent fast where you're eating at 8 in the morning. Okay. That's typically what we're recommending for most people before the day starts getting crazy. You're eating somewhere around 12:30 or 1 o'clock or so. And then you're eating 5 o'clock at night, 5:30. Okay, that works for most people. So now what do we have? Well, we have a 14-hour intermittent fast. Okay, 8 o'clock to, let's say, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night. And then for the caloric restriction, same amount of calories. However, your breakfast might be at 7 o'clock, whenever you wake up in the morning, whenever you typically like to eat. Maybe you have a mid-morning snack, maybe you have lunch, maybe you have dinner at night, maybe you have a little snack before bed. But it's all the same calories. It's all 1,500 calories, all right? So that's where we're at right now. Now, let's talk about this because it's going to start to make a whole lot more sense if I've lost you so far, but it's going to make sense as we go through the 7 big differences and why dieting, which is caloric restriction, is not the best way to get to your results, right? The first one is this, blood sugar. Okay, let's look at this. So blood sugar is the most likely the lowest it's going to be when you wake up in the morning. Not the case for everyone because their body has what's called a blocked insulin receptor outside of the cells. And that does not come from sugar alone. Let me just share that with you. I'm going to do another show on this. People have made sugar out to be the enemy, and for sure processed sugar is. But you typically don't get blocked insulin receptors by eating sugar in the diet, okay? It comes from other things, and I will explain that on future shows. But suffice to say, besides after a hard workout, most likely your blood sugar is lowest in the morning. So if you're waiting an hour or two before eating, we are most likely going to have lower blood sugar first thing in the morning. We're going to be able to maybe tap in a little extra body fat. We're certainly doing that overnight. But whenever we eat something, right, unless it's literally a small amount of vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, something high in fiber, or it's fat, we're most likely going to get a spike in blood sugar. This does not mean that it's a bad thing. Right away, people go into hysteria online with carbohydrates if their blood sugar raises to like 120, right, milligrams per deciliter. You have to understand that the body's well equipped to be able to deal with that. It's a problem when your blood sugar doesn't drop back down after 2 hours, 3 hours maximum. That's when it's a problem. Because if you look at the model of nutrition, you are back to and it doesn't go from 120 back down to 80 in a minute, right? So let's say a half hour after the meal, your blood sugar is up to 120. Okay, what does it go back down? Well, it starts dropping every couple minutes until it's back to a baseline. That's the goal. I mean, that's how blood sugar should work in a healthy individual. So that's why it doesn't mean that eating carbohydrates are bad. But what I'm going to say is when you eat carbs and you eat protein, believe it or not, protein and those amino acids can raise blood sugar through also the glycemic load of the meal. It's going to increase blood sugar. Again, not a bad thing, but do keep in mind that there are going to be certain modulations then within the body, releasing more insulin to bring back down blood sugar. And some subsequent inflammation from that. Again, that your body's equipped to deal with. But the longer you fast, the more stable your blood sugar typically, right? Until a greater degree of stress in the body. And I can't go through that on today's show, but I will show you how stress affects the blood sugar levels at stephencabral.com/2021, as well as a free webinar that I did at stephencabral.com/BRMI. Okay, the second big difference between intermittent fasting and caloric restriction is autophagy, okay? So autophagy, let me break this down as well, because autophagy is really always taking place when digestion has already been completed and blood sugar levels are stable. It's just not to the degree that we want to be able to kill cancer cells and help clean up the body until about a day's worth of fasting. But just because autophagy isn't taking place to a greater degree after that 24 hours doesn't mean that you still don't get benefits when you've stopped eating for a certain period of time, such as the 12 hours overnight. So do keep in mind that as long as the food's really out of your stomach by the time you're going to bed, which is why I do recommend stopping your last meal 2 to 3 hours or even 4 hours before bed, then you're going to maximize deep sleep. You're going to maximize REM, so that helps with rejuvenation. But you're also going to help to greater maximize autophagy because by the time you go to bed, a lot of that energy being used for digestion, I'll be talking about that in a few more points, is now being used to get yourself off to slumberland, and also that your blood sugar is going to be more stable as well because your blood sugar should have come down by then. So all of these things lead to better sleep, but they also lead to greater autophagy, which for you leads to hopefully more longevity and wellness-based benefits. So that's a big one right there. Do keep in mind, you don't get that with caloric restriction because a lot of people on caloric restriction might be grazing throughout the day, but they're still only eating 1,500 calories, right? But they're grazing throughout the day, or they're eating a snack right before bed, which certainly is not going to be beneficial in terms of autophagy, and they don't go that 12 to 14 plus hours of intermittent fasting. So the third big difference is hormones. So believe it or not, you can destabilize or stabilize hormones with intermittent fasting and caloric restriction. Let me give you an example. A lot of people trend more towards actually hypoglycemic, which means that they fast for too long, they begin to drop in blood sugar, which naturally, again, this is a normal human physiological response. It begins to spike stress hormones like cortisol, which is done on purpose by the body because cortisol breaks down stored sugar inside of the body. So then your body breaks down that glycogen, which is the name for the stored sugar, and it releases that as usable glucose in the bloodstream. And that gets you back up to normal glucose. So fasting for too long, especially if stressed or hypoglycemic, is not necessarily a good thing. So if you wake up in the morning and your blood sugar is less than a 75 or 70 for many people, that can lead to more of a hypoglycemic response, especially more in that Vata-based body type or ectomorph body type. So it's important to know your blood sugar in the first place and keeping in mind also that fasting for too long, especially for women, may lower their progesterone levels, causing estrogen dominance, as well as lowering their thyroid levels. This is easy enough to not argue over. A lot of people love to argue over this. I have no idea why people are still arguing in this day and age. You can literally just run an at-home lab test like these stress hormones, mood and metabolism test that tells you what your cortisol levels are, what your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, your DHEA, your thyroid levels are throughout the day, as well as your hemoglobin A1C and insulin levels. I mean, it's the ultimate test. You can run it literally right at home. I will link up how to run that home lab right at home if you'd like at stephencabral.com/2021, or you can just go to equa.life to find that lab test. Okay, so those are hormones. So the negatives of fasting too long are really spikes in stress hormones and then a decrease in sex hormones. For men, a lot of times it's testosterone. For women, a lot of times it's progesterone. Men and women, it's thyroid, but especially women, it's thyroid over the longer term. In the short term, what can it do? Well, fasting, believe it or not, can actually improve those hormones as well because you're giving your body a time to re-regulate blood sugar, right? So if blood sugar is able to be re-regulated to a better degree, you're feeling more stable. You don't have those highs and lows, or especially highs, which causes more inflammation. So again, it's all about achieving equilibrium rather than trying to force the body into a certain state. And that's why some people do great with a 12-hour, some people with a 14, some people with a 16-hour fast. And again, it's all based on the individual. We'll get to longer fasts in just a moment later. Okay, big difference number 4 is energy. So remember, whenever you start eating for the day, you are shifting about 30% of your energy for the day towards digestion. You might say, well, that's why I should never eat, right? A lot of people say that. But you have to understand is too much of a good thing is a bad thing, right? It always works that way. Like literally every single time. It's like too much of something is also bad. So that's why a lot of people, when they fast, they feel fantastic. Well, a lot of times it's because they have weak digestion or they have some type of digestive issue. That's a big part of it. The other part of it is they're producing more stress hormones. And because they're producing stress hormones, they also feel very much more vigilant, much more awake, much more focused. The goal is to be able to fast and not spike stress levels and not use that energy towards digestion right away, right? But the thing is, if you have a good, strong digestive system, not that big a deal to start breaking down food, especially if you're doing an easier to digest breakfast, which I talk about on all my previous shows. So you can check out the number 1 breakfast, I believe it's called. We'll try to link it up for you at episode 2021. But you would definitely want to start your day with a lighter meal, not necessarily with a very heavy meal, so that you get to enjoy brain clarity and cognition earlier in the morning as well. And again, there's always happy mediums to this, but do understand that your energy is going to be truncated, I guess, or it's going to be at least shifted more towards digestion when you do start eating. It's another reason too, when someone eats a very large meal, if their digestion is not strong enough, they have brain fog or they start to feel a little sleepy after that meal. It's typically not the food's fault, unless you're sensitive to that food. It's typically weakened digestion. And again, all of that can be fixed. All right, big difference number 5 is fat loss. You have to understand this, that you can be on a caloric restrictive diet and yet still have higher levels of blood sugar. All right. That's because you're on one of these diets that counts calories or points, but not the quality of the food. A lot of people say a calorie is a calorie. I'm just going to follow my macros and I can eat my chips and my processed foods and my favorite beverages. I can even have some alcohol. Listen, I get it. You're following the diet. You might lose weight in the short term, but you're really doing cellular damage in the long term. You really are. Because if you don't eat healthy, it has downstream repercussions on your cell membrane health, which means what's allowed in and what's allowed out in terms of nutrients in, waste out, because we have 40 trillion cells in our body. They all need nutrients and they all give off waste. That's how it works. They're basically like little microcosms of our macrocosm body. Literally the same thing. Everything in the world seems to be a macrocosm to a microcosm to a greater microcosm, right? It's just macro, micro, macro, micro. And it's the same inside of our body. So we have to understand that. So remember, a low-calorie diet is typically the worst way to lose weight. It really is. Because what you're doing is you're lowering your metabolism. And you might not be dealing with any of the hormone issues, and insulin is still a hormone, so you might not be dealing with those hormone issues like I talk about in terms of the adrenals and thyroid, et cetera. So what do we do? Well, we have to understand is that if you are eating all throughout the day and you're not letting your blood sugar come back down, you're most likely not going to burn body fat, as well as someone that is actually doing some form of intermittent fasting that enables their blood sugar to decrease overnight. I keep really going back to the overnight because the best time to start an intermittent fast is in the evening, like earlier in the evening, than it is to skip breakfast. And I give all reasons why. Again, I give all the physiological, the scientific reasons why on previous podcasts. And I'll link up my intermittent fasting podcast that there's one new show every week on that as well. Typically, there is lately at least. All right. So number 6 is this, digestion. Now I talked about this just a little bit before, but you have to understand is that many people are eating foods that they're sensitive to, or they have candida overgrowth, they have SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, they have maybe parasites, or they have H. pylori. The parasites aren't going to be affected by it as much, but really the H. pylori, which is a bacterial infection typically in the stomach, and it can move downstream as well, the candida and the SIBO, for sure, are all affected by the foods you eat. So you eat foods and all of a sudden you have slow bowel movements or slower peristaltic movement. These foods begin to ferment, or they stay in the stomach longer and ferment in the stomach, causing bloating. They can cause gas. They can cause skin rashes. They can cause acne. But really what's happening is the imbalanced microbiome is being fed by foods that it shouldn't, or you're just eating foods that you're sensitive to, and those are causing inflammation as well. All of these things, again, lead to hormonal issues, weight gain, and then, of course, immune and wellness-based issues. So when you're intermittent fasting, what are you doing? Well, you're not putting any foods in that might be any issue that you don't even know about, right? So the best thing that you could do is run the gut-based test. There's a urine test, a stool test, and a blood drop test that you can do right at home. Those are the gut-based tests. They're called the Candida metabolic vitamins test, the bacteria and parasite stool test, and the IgG food sensitivity test. Again, you can run those with your local integrative health practitioner, or you can run them at equa.life. It's completely your choice, whatever you feel is best for you. But when you're not eating, you're not creating inflammation from foods, right? So that's the interesting thing. But if you are eating and you're eating a lot of these foods that you're susceptible to, for example, let's say you're sensitive to almonds and you're making paleo snacks made out of almond flour, and every time you eat that, you're causing inflammation. That's an issue, right? And the inflammation is, again, going to imbalance inflammation. You're going to retain more water. You're going to feel more puffy. You're going to feel more swollen. You're going to have a whole lot more difficult time losing weight. All right, the last one here for today is inflammation. We keep talking about inflammation. Well, here's the deal. One of the best reasons to get yourself into a state of autophagy, one of the best reasons to get your state into level blood sugar, one of the best reasons to take away the energy from digestion is to be able to better balance the immune system. And the immune system allows you to stay less inflamed. You might say, well, how does that work? You have to understand is that every assault on the body through a food sensitivity, a food dye, gluten like we talked about yesterday, or glutamate, or basically eating all throughout the day is causing inflammation. Well, one of the ways that we combat normal levels of inflammation just from normal human digestion as well is to give our bodies a break. That's it. We simply give our digestive system a break that it truly needs, right? Especially during the dark hours when our body wasn't meant to be consuming mass quantities of food, especially if you think about it, light, even fire for the last million years, humans were alive for a lot longer than that. You'd be eating during daylight hours. Our body's actually equipped through a certain diurnal rhythm, a circadian rhythm, diurnal, 2 times a day. The light times of the day, the dark times of the day, right? We do better eating more towards the light times of the day. And I go over the best time of the day to actually have your biggest meal. So go back, check out those previous podcasts. But remember, when you work within your normal diurnal rhythms, your body's going to be much, much healthier. So bringing it all together, the summary of the show is this. You can use caloric restriction, but don't go too low. If you go too low in your calories, you're going to slow your metabolism. That's going to be difficult then to ever eat more food, which you want to be able to do. The goal is to use reverse dieting, which again, there's another show on, that allows you to eat more while still losing the weight and of course, maintaining a healthy body. Besides that, you want to be incorporating some level of intermittent fasting, 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, and even doing one-day fast. And I teach you how to do that, not every day, but at certain strategic times of the week that will allow you to further increase autophagy and reach all of your wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging goals. Again, all of these links will be at stephencabral.com/2021. And of course, if there's any questions from me, always do reach out. Let me and my team know how we can help. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone, and I'll talk with you tomorrow on another Cabral Concept. Thank you so much for tuning into today's podcast. Once again, I want to let you know that I appreciate you and I'm so happy that you're a part of this community. I also want to let you know when we have amazing special offers going on over at Equa.life. And right now is probably one of the best offers we ever introduced to our community. And that is the ability to run the Big 5 Labs at $500 off. This is something that we like to do twice a year. If you took advantage of it in the spring, congrats, that's amazing. I'm happy for you because these 5 labs will literally tell you everything about your omega-3 levels, your inflammation levels, your digestion, your mitochondrial function for energy, your sleep, your hormones, your stress levels. It looks at all your vitamins, all your mineral levels, your food sensitivities, and so much more. They're simple to use, easy to take. You use them right at home. And then once you mail in those labs, you get a 90-minute consultation. Not 15 minutes like you get with your typical doctor. You get 90 minutes with one of our certified Equa.life health coaches. They take you through your results. They make sure you know what they mean. And then they give you a plan personalized for you. It doesn't get any better than this. And for right now, while supplies last, you can save $500 by heading over to Equa.life. That's EQUI.LIFE. Hope you take advantage of this and let me know if you have any questions. Take care.